Greetings, everybody. My name is Nicole Platt, and I'm chair of the League of Women Voters of Lawrence Township. I'm very happy to welcome you all here tonight on our public program that is designed to take a hard look at racial equity, or the lack of it, in Mercer County. And we're very privileged to have 4 outstanding speakers tonight, and our program facilitated by Dr. Simona Brickers, who is the DEI chair of our league. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We work to increase understanding of public policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. We welcome women, men, and students who can join us free of charge. We're happy to have new members. And now I'm going to turn the program over to Dr. Simona L. Brickers, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicole. So tonight, our panelists are, who we're still waiting for, one, but her name is Verlina Reynolds-Jackson, Assemblywoman, Deputy Major Leader, New Jersey Legislative District 15, and 3 founding members of Black Solidarity Lawrence. I'm going to give you a brief bio for each. Assemblywoman Verlina Reynolds-Jackson is a product of the City of Trenton Public School System. She obtained an advanced degree from Trenton State, known to many as the College of New Jersey, and Central Michigan University, in addition to earning a municipal finance certification from Rutgers University. Her career as a social worker coupled with a commitment to public service led her to the elected position of East Ward Councilwoman, where she legislated laws for the City of Trenton. Assemblywoman Reynolds-Jackson proudly served 7.5 years on City Council before being elected to fill the vacant New Jersey Assembly seat in the 15th Legislative District. She currently serves as a vice chair of the Consumer Affairs Committee and serves as a member of the Joint Committee on Economic Justice, Equal Employment Opportunity, Joint Committee on Public School, Commerce and Economic Development, and Budget Committees. Black in Lawrence, Kyla Allen, Kyla Allen, Jayda Parker, and Kayla Phillips are all New Jersey natives and graduates of Lawrence High School, class of 2015. Kyla is a graduate of St. Joe's University. Jayda and Kayla both graduated from Hampton University, all in 2019. Congratulations. On May 31st, 2020, all 3 young women organized a protest in honor of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor in downtown Trenton to stand against police brutality that has continually harmed Black and Brown communities. Their event brought together almost 3,000 people and helped heal the Black community of the pain they felt during this time. Since then, Black Solidarity organized a second large protest at the Lawrence High School, and in October, a candlelight vigil in honor of the many people lost in Mercer County due to the pandemic. Kyla lives in Lawrence, Jayda lives in Princeton, and Kayla lives in Trenton. So thank you for representing Mercer County in a diverse way. So are we ready to start? Okay, Assemblywoman has landed. Good to see you.
I'm here.
Absolutely. So we'll start with the first question. The year 2020 presented unprecedented voting circumstances, including COVID-related challenges for in-person voting, coupled with reports of Postal Service slowdowns for mail-in ballots. We believe New Jersey rose to the task of meeting voters' needs and protecting voters' rights. Governor Murphy codified some of these efforts when he signed Senate Bill S 3202 on March 31st, 2021. All right. It was actually televised live on Facebook, and Ms. Abrams actually spoke for a moment before she had to leave. So I was there. I was privileged to be there. And the League of Women Voters, Nancy Heger, was there and spoke as well. So the first question is, do you agree with this assessment about the voting rights? Go ahead.
So I agree absolutely. And let me just say thank you to all of these courageous women on this panel with me. I've met a few of you over the summer. We did some events out in Lawrence. And so it's good to see you. Glad that you're still working with us all. And I do agree with the assessment. I think, overall, when we talk about having access to the ballot, the League of Women Voters have really, really been there. And, I think because of the unity that we have in the collectivity, the organization, the advocacy that comes out of this group really does resonate throughout the state. It is a respectable organization that everyone stops and pushes pause when they hear, oh, this is coming from the league, because you all do your research. You find out what has to be done. How does this impact everyone? Is it a good thing? And how can we fix it? So it's just not a no. And so there's ways that we can try to fix things to make it so that it's equitable for everyone. And I think with the bill that just got passed recently, the early voting bill does exactly that. It gives us an opportunity to get to the polls early because people work. Other countries, and I don't know if I told you, Simone, but I remember talking with someone from another country, and they take voting very, very seriously. And they have a huge turnout. And if you don't vote, there are penalties. There are things that happen. And so here, someone didn't get a chance to vote, and they were like, oh my God, like they went down. They were hysterical. They thought they were going to go to jail. They thought they were going to be fined. So in addition to, just trying to make sure you do your civic duties, you have all these other things that come out. And so, here we take it for granted, but in other places, it's no, I must represent my party, my person, my community, my tribe, whatever it is there. They gotta get there to do that. And I think that's what we're all seeing now, why voting is so important. And I was glad to see Stacey Abrams on the call from Georgia. All the voter suppression that's happening in other places, New Jersey got it right. We're trying to make it easier. We're trying to make it accessible. And so if work sometimes is a hindrance and vote by mail isn't there, because everybody I talk to, I want to pull the trigger. I want to go into the machine. I want to push the button. I want to do all these things. And so this new law that's going to take effect in for the general election, and then thereafter it'll be in the primary in general. But moving forward, they'll be able to do that. You'll have more time to be able to get there on the weekends, during the week. And so we anticipate, and I'm sure just like everyone else, that we're going to have much more people participate in early voting.
Okay, thank you. So Jayda, Kayla, or Kaya?
Yeah, this is a conversation between us ladies on the call here. So full disclosure, I am super bad at cutting people off. I am trying to work on that. So just jump right on in. If you feel it, snap it up, clap it up. But let this be like a conversational piece.
Of course. I guess I'll go first. I totally agree with it. Simply because as I was driving through Mercer County, I saw plenty of stations, vote here, and then also like big signs. So if you didn't go to the like exact place that it was, there would be signs on the side of the road, big arrows. A friend of mine, parents are both, they both like have sicknesses, and it was a little scary of a time. So we actually went to go drop off their mail thing in this small little ballot in Hamilton, and it was a line of people just going in, dropping off their ballots. And I sat back and I thought, I was like, wow, look in the times that we're in. New Jersey's really making it, accessible for everybody. So I 100% agree.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I live in Trenton. I grew up in West Trenton, but currently I'm in East Trenton. So I don't really know the streets like that, street names in comparison to West Trenton. So when I got the list of Trenton, my partner and I got in the car to drive, and they actually have one right in front of Trenton High main campus. And we literally drove a block. And I'm like, could have just walked. I actually waited really, really late. I waited maybe the last week coming to closing. I was just procrastinating, but I thank God that it was in walking distance.
Right.
For example, I was working and I had a second job or something like that, and I couldn't get to the polls. I could have easily just walked a block literally, and the box was right in front of the campus, and I just, put the ballot in. So I think that's really, really great. There's so many people that live in this area, so the fact that just everyone knows where Trenton High main campus is, so just walk straight there, and it's right in front of the building.
I think also that's part of the issue, right? Making sure that going to vote is accessible to everyone. Recently, because of COVID, they had to cut back on the number of polling locations. So the drop boxes were able to help. But even moving forward, we have to make sure that they're accessible for the disabled. And we have to make sure we have enough in towns. And so that you can walk to. In Trenton, as you said, Kayla, a lot of people don't have cars. We shouldn't make it hard for people to go drop off their ballot or go to a polling location. These are things that should be less than a mile to walk away and easily to be able to get to. So I think that's something else that we need to be mindful of, and having those conversations with our board of elections, our elected officials, our superintendents, even our poll workers, just to say, be mindful about when you're making these decisions. Is it easy for someone to be able to walk to get to the polling locations? Out in some of the rural areas, that's not possible, but they have them at your firehouses, your schools. They have it at different places that is a common place for people to know where they are. And I live in East Trenton too. I'm not far from the high school, so that's a great thing.
So Kyla, did you have anything to add about your voting experience?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. I agree with the three of you. I think especially seeing the lengths that politicians are going to in other states, like Pennsylvania even, I think it's that much more important that New Jersey is making it easier and more accessible. I know personally I was able to get one of my friends registered who prior to this probably wouldn't have, was trying to ignore it, but I was like, they're everywhere. So easy, sign up. And so I got her registered and she voted this time. So
nice. So I'll go on to the second question.
Well, wait, I need a plug because I need an ask. So we're not done with the whole voting. My ask is to help us get the law enforcement, limiting law enforcement to the polling locations. And that's S2923. And so what this does, it limits the number of law enforcement that can be in polling places and at the drop boxes. And so it passed in the Assembly, but it did not pass in the Senate. And so we still need the league's help. We need everyone on this call to please tell your friends and your family to support this delegation, to support this legislation, because it's so important. We're not, law enforcement plays a very crucial role in protecting the ballots. We all understand that they transport ballots, they pick up ballots. We've even called the National Guard in to help us count ballots. So they have a role, just not sitting in the polling locations. And recently I was reminded by Senator Turner that people that are on parole or probation have the ability now to vote. And so when you think about it, having law enforcement sitting inside the polling locations is a barrier. That is exactly.
Yeah.
So where we want to make this the law that this is not allowable, not that we don't need them, just 100 steps away. And if 100 steps, if you think about it, is about 40 or 30 steps. So we don't need you in the building. We just need you outside the building, protecting outside and using those valuable taxpayer resources someplace else, just not sitting inside. So the number again is S2923, and we still need your help in making sure we get this passed through so that we can have more people come out and exercise their civil rights and their civic responsibility in voting.
I definitely agree with that, because that can be intimidating at times, depending on your situation. So I definitely agree.
So true. Thank you. All right. So our second question is, The murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd exposed the world to the violence and racism of non-white people in the country. Can we speak? Okay, I'm gonna read this again. The murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd exposed the world to the violence and racism non-white people in our country face all too often. Can you speak about your knowledge, if there's any, about racism in Mercer County? So what comes to mind for me, and the young people may not know it, but young ladies may not know it, is we were nationally known for racial profiling. Driving while black in New Jersey.
Yeah, I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. For me, the question hearing it after, it's kind of contradicting in my opinion, because the examples that you used were Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and those people were Black. So I feel like we need to get comfortable with saying Black when we are talking about these incidents, because even though non-Black people do experience these situations, I feel like especially if you're using an example like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, I think that the question could have been, better if we would have just said Black, because we do deal with something a little bit more serious than the other cultures that we do have in our communities. So for me, racism, when it comes to that, it's a plethora of things that I can sit here and tell you guys. But in Breonna Taylor's situation, it's kind of hard because she was just simply sleeping in her bed at night. And then George Floyd's situation, with everything going on, is kind of sensitive because I think personally, the video alone goes to show that what happened to him didn't necessarily need to happen. But there's so much things. I could be sleeping in my bed and, be a victim of police brutality. I could be walking down the street and, like you said, be profiled. I can be driving. I could be going picking up a snack from 7-Eleven. So I feel like in Black people's situation, we can do anything as simple as breathe,
Yes,
So
yeah.
that's
Good
my
point, Jayda. Good point. And that's a fact. That is a fact. Oftentimes I'll hear people say in forums like this, can you ask participants that, or can you tell participants that you're creating a safe environment? And I told them, no, I can't.
right.
I'm Black in America. I am not safe in my bed. I am not safe driving. I'm not safe anywhere. So I can't provide you with something that I haven't had the liberty of enjoying myself. So that's a great point. You're absolutely right. We're in a time and age where we need to be direct about what's actually going on. And Black bodies are the ones that are often subjected to this type of behavior.
Not safe eating ice cream on your couch.
All right. Right.
Like that guy in Texas where the cop walked in the wrong apartment and shot him, and he's sitting there eating ice cream in his own apartment.
I know.
So Kayla, anything, or Kyla, anything you want to add to that conversation?
Yeah, Mercer County it's very diverse, much like Lawrenceville. It's a very diverse place, but just because it's diverse doesn't mean it's any different than anywhere else. Racism is everywhere, and we've definitely realized that over the last year if we weren't aware of it already. But I can definitely say growing up, I know like which towns had a certain reputation, which towns not to drive through at night. Even this summer, I went to a protest in Hopewell, and while we were there, they had like a biker gang riding around trying to intimidate everyone. And it was scary. Like I have never felt that kind of fear before, but it was very scary. So it's definitely prevalent. But just because it's a diverse area, or just because it's even other minorities, doesn't mean that there isn't racism.
Right.
Great point. Great point.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, like I said, I live in Trenton. So it's mostly Black and brown people who live here. So I don't have the direct racism that I might have in Hopewell or even Lawrence or Ewing, anything like that. But there is racism, I believe, within the government, within the police force. So I might be comfortable walking to the store with my neighbors and be fine with that. But if a policeman pulls up, I'm terrified for my life, to be honest. So there are different, I don't want to say different levels, but just the racism might be in different places.
Right.
So,
Even thinking about communities that, like I know West Windsor is a very big like brown community, but those populations are sometimes also racist to Black people. So that's another intersection that that should be brought up.
Right.
mhm.
I feel like people look at Lawrence specifically, like when I actually went from Princeton to Lawrence. So going in, I was like, wow, there's a plethora of different, races. There's, Black, brown, all types of people. So I went into it thinking I'm gonna, have a great experience. And then, I feel like you might think somebody is your ally because their skin complexion might be closer to yours, but because of things that were teached down and things that are learned, or even people just trying to be in high school at least accepted by their other classmates, they will try and have those microaggressions that people that don't look like them have because they want to fit in with the right crowd. So from my experience in Lawrence, I hear, or if I tell somebody, oh, I graduated from Lawrence High, oh, wow, there's so many different people in that school. Yes, but the things that I dealt with inside of Lawrence High were something that you would think I would deal with in the South years ago, you know what I'm saying? So I think
I mean, the incident that happened like not very long ago with the student at the football game, that was like very recent.
right, very, very recent.
And it's not just there, right? So you bring up the incident that was at Lawrence High. There was another one at the regional school up in Hopewell. I think often when you look at sporting events, when you have different classes that come together, I know I've heard different conversations about, even Trenton High making sure that they have their games during the daytime versus at nighttime, trying to be proactive instead of reactive. But it's sometimes we talk about implicit bias and how it is deeply ingrained into the culture. And so, we do have to speak about it. We have to teach the coaches and the players, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. And I think at the Lawrence incident, it was just so open. It was so like bold and like this was okay. And this
And
was
the
not.
worst part about that, it was another brown person who did that to the
Mhm.
Black person.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to the systemic racism. When you look at Black people, they are the bottom. They are the weaker of all of the other classes of colors out there. And I think, we're probably going to get to it later, but this is why we say Black Lives Matter. This is what we're saying. We're saying we're equal to everyone. We're human. We breathe the same air. We have the same blood. I may be saving your life, but it goes back to those types of implicit bias that we just have to really look at our leadership and see where is this coming from, and not just to put a band-aid on and say, oh, I took a class, but really dig deep in to figure out where is this coming from, and then how do you change that, because it's deeply rooted.
Right.
Yeah. And like what Jayda said, when you say non-white, it's grouping, there's white, and then you group together every other person that's not white, which is a lot of people.
Right.
And like she said before, we go through different things, especially what you just said with Lawrence, that was everyone in the county. I was like, oh my gosh, that was just crazy. So the group together, all of us, all non-white people into a group, it's different. And it's also making it seem like white and non-white, like white is the standard. It's either you're non-white. Like, do you get what I'm trying to say? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think to another point that you made, Kayla, about community policing, you said, if a police officer where the car or whatever comes by you, initially you're fearful. And I think that's because we need to build on community policing. Part of the huge disconnect is that we don't have the same that we used to have. I can remember we had the boys and girls, or the police athletic lead, where you had these interactions with police and fire. And so it was more of a community because people were of the community. And so there's more legislation out there that's requiring law enforcement to live in the community. And I think that I don't see anything wrong with that. I think this is something that we're looking for. You have more interest, you have more personal gain, personal stakes in it when you live in the community that you're protecting. And then also it goes back, right? It goes vice versa. You know, we've gotten a disconnect about knowing who our neighbors are because of the fear, because we don't know, and we're more transient than we used to be.
Yeah.
My mom has lived in her house for over 30 some years
Yeah.
now. And so, you know, I have moved probably 1, 2, 3, 4 times and I'm still 30. No, but
Yes,
but
you
you
are.
know, so we still, you know, we're more transient than we used to be. And so we want to still know who's our neighbors. We want to know who's our, and it, you know, the question is too, who's on our police force? Who's patrolling our community? Who's at the top? Who's the chief? Who's the director? And for us to be able to build those relationships, because you can have national night out one time a year, but we need more than just that. We want to be, that should be like the party at the end of the summer because of all the work that we did in between. And so when we talk about being proactive in our communities and having our neighborhood watch programs or our backpack drives, and you get the police and the prosecutor's office to participate, it's different. And, you know, I am very proud to say we have that here in Mercer County. Our chief prosecutor, Free, is very, very much that. And they're there. They're very, very helpful to us. And even our police director, Director Coley, she's very, very helpful. And so but I think that's because of the strategic, deliberate thought process that I do. And I want to make sure that I know who these people are. So I'm going to, you know, give a homework assignment to everybody that's on this call today. Find out who your police director is, who your chief is, and what type of community policing are they doing in your area. You know, we have sometimes parking could be a simple issue. You know, who do you call? And so you want to be able to know if this is your neighborhood patrolman, to say, listen, this car has been here for about a month now and nobody's moved. Not only are you concerned about the car, but, you know, it could be that somebody's home alone and they could be hurt or injured, let alone you want to just park in front of your own house. But that's besides the point. So we just, you know, again, you want to know who to call in case, you know, you need a resource in the community. So I think that's something that, you know, we should be deliberate and really strategic about.
Yeah, I think you should be comfortable enough to call as well, too.
Sure, absolutely.
Because I've seen situations where, like, even friends of mine, they've gotten into car accidents, and I'm like, "Did you call the police?" And they're like, no. And it's like, you know, it's hard, you know, like it's certain things you should. I definitely agree. You should feel comfortable enough to call your police.
Yeah.
So another part of that question is, what are the ways in which you envision reducing incidents of police brutality, violence, and racial injustice that exists in our Black and Brown communities?
I guess I'll go first again. So I kind of been thinking about this question and how I'm going to word it. I feel like you personally, Parker, I feel like it's not up to me to reduce that. I feel like it's up to these officers and their superiors to hold themselves to a certain standard. I feel like it's a plethora of things. I keep using this word because there's so many things that
Sure.
come into it, you know, because I feel like, say you're a police officer, you have somebody that you're assigned to, you have a superior. That superior needs to hold you to a standard, and then their superiors should hold them to a standard. But I feel like the problem with the police is that they're so deeply rooted in racism that they're so used to handling situations the same way. So it's like, who can they really look to hold themselves to that standard, you know? Because a lot of the times the older people as well, they're used to handling situations the way they were back in the day. And a lot of the times, me, Kayla, and Kyla had this conversation, and it was kind of just like, I feel like I don't really see groups of police like coming together. Like it's always like, oh, there's that bad cop and there's good cops. Like, why can't you guys just be cops in general and hold you guys to a certain standard? If you know a cop that's like a friend of yours, because a lot of the times I'll hear people, oh, my cousin's a police and he said that was so bad and he would never do something like that, you know, but their superior needs to hold them to that. You need to reach out to that cop that you see doing something and be like, hey, like this is, you know, because I can't step to a cop myself. I feel like Me personally, I can't step to a cop and tell them that, but I feel like we need to hold the superiors accountable. That's my answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That brings up a lot, Jada, because oftentimes when they come in the community and something is done in a Black community and they're looking for community involvement to, you know, give information, there's a reluctancy to cooperate with them. So how do we overcome that?
Well, I feel like the reluctancy to cooperate with police is just strictly from fear, I think. I think we need to overcome that fear first. But you know, is there a book that I can open up and how do I overcome fear? You know, so it's this is why I like conversations like this, because you just start, you know, spitting out ideas and you know, brainstorming of ways, but it's just kind of like hard to attack, you know, like how do we overcome that fear of feeling comfortable with our police? You know, we have to trust them to a point where it's like, okay, if I come to this police about this, is their superior going to hold them to a certain standard that's going to support me and how I feel? You know, because you can have some, you know, community things and we have the police there and we're trying to reach out to them. But if their superior is like, oh, no, don't worry about it, then it's like, how do we fix that? You know, because you can't fix the fear in that either.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, can you, when it comes to speaking to the police, also, can you trust that the police are going to do their best job with handling this case? Are they going to get as much evidence and actually, if I give you this information, what are you going to do with this information?
Right.
Situation, or are you going to, okay, I can't solve it, you know, and just kind of push it to the back burner? So I think it's a combination of trust and, you know, getting rid of that fear.
Yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question, I like what Jada said, I can talk to policemen, I can talk to chief, I can do all of that. Like my dad was a fireman, so I get how it works. I can't personally walk into the police training camp and speak, like try to get you guys to understand things. I personally can't do that. I can bring the information to you, but like Jada said, it's gonna have to come from the superior to, you know, make sure, just like when I go to work and my boss tells me something's not right, I just expect that's the same thing for you and how your, you know, how you guys work, how your department works. So yeah, we can speak, but after that, I can't force you to actually, you know, take the time and speak to the community and take the time to, if you're pulling a traffic stop, I'm not there to walk you through or like give you advice on how you should handle that situation. So it's up to you and your superior to really break down, okay, if there's a traffic stop, this is what you should do. This, and if it happens, you know, I'm pretty sure they do that in training, but there's some kind of disconnect. And I feel like we all believe that there's some kind of disconnect. And so, yeah, I think it starts within their department, really.
Yeah, I feel like Kyla will probably come in behind me on this one, but I just want to add, like, when it comes, because Kayla brought it up, training, you know, like, do we see?
Oh, don't steal what I'm gonna say.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I just had to make sure that me and you were on the same page.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So over the
summer,
I learned that cosmetology school is longer than police training.
Yes.
And that is just crazy to me. I feel like that's like, how are you enforcing the law if you don't know the law? Could be wrong, but I don't believe it's a requirement to have like a degree in criminal justice or something to become a police officer. But I feel like that's something that should be required, because that is like a lot of responsibility. And like you guys said, like building that trust again. How can we have trust in people who haven't like really taken the time to learn the law, that they're going to do a good job of enforcing it?
So let me snap that up, because that is so true. We've talked about in the legislature about changing the law enforcement into an actual license, like a doctor, because they have the ability to take someone's life. Like there's so much power in this, and so there is conversations about changing how this may be reformed. But the other point I wanted to make was, you know, we need to become the next chief of police. We need to become the next prosecutor. We need to make sure that we're in the cycle. There's this big push for state troopers. we are like the gold mines right now. They're looking for Black and brown people. They desperately need women, and it's not just on the road. You know, the part of their highway patrol is one thing, but they go all the way through forensics. There's so many other careers in being a state trooper that we don't do it enough justice by just calling it law enforcement. But we need to also make sure that that is part of, you know, someone's career conversation to say, are you interested? And when I tell you the bonuses that come along with this thing, like they pay for you to go to school, you get another 10,000 bonus if you go back for a master's program. It's like all kinds of perks that is just unbelievable, that is just not offered in other occupations. And so, you know, if that, like you said, there's interest in criminal justice, you know, these are all things. It's a physical training, but I think the age now is up in the 30s. I want to say 35, I think is the cutoff. But there's all type of career opportunities in being a state trooper. The other thing I wanted to point out in the conversation was the Attorney General just put out a huge package, a huge directive reducing the use of force by law enforcement. And I know one of the ladies brought it up, but there is a rule that every officer has a duty to intervene. You have you have to prevent, stop, and report misconduct. There's also a portal for every use of force. It has to be documented in this statewide portal. They're able to they review it often because what we're trying to do is identify officers that have a pattern that is accumulating. Right. And so there's a whole list of 7 rules that goes into the directive. And I think Ed is on the call. If you could just put it in the chat, Ed, so that you can go to the Attorney General's website. It's www.njoag.gov/force. And this is the Attorney General's office. And I think it's right on the first page. As soon as you log on, it pops right up. But it goes into this because we've been having these conversations with him, really asking, you know, how do we de-escalate? How do we, you know, again, it's not us against them. Right. We're all human. And so, you know, we have, Simone, you talked about it, the racial profiling on the highway. Like, we have reports that say this. And so everybody isn't been replaced. Everybody isn't gone. So we want to make sure that, you know, the new recruits that come in have received the implicit bias training, that it's in the material, that the leadership is also receiving it, because that's where it starts to get ingrained in the culture from the first beginning. Mm-hmm. So we just have to be mindful of those things as well. And again, develop those relationships, you know, to be able to say hi, you know, if you're just passing by at McDonald's. I think here in Trenton, McDonald's has done an excellent job at have a coffee with a cop. And so they're trying to build that community policing relationship with the community to say, you know, we're here to protect and serve you. And so that's one great example that I just wanted to make sure I brought up tonight.
Okay. All right. So I'm intrigued because Black and Lawrence representatives said that they wanted to see the leadership in the police be more proactive in addressing the officers' misconduct. So I'm curious, do you believe in, or do you support defunding the police?
I wouldn't say defunding. I would say community policing. I think there is a lot more that has to go into it. I think when you have a bad apple, that bad apple needs to be dealt with. I think there's due process that has to happen. But I also think, you know, the town needs to look at, how are you doing your recruitment? Who are the people? What barriers are in place so that I've heard, you know, oh, we have very high standards. And right. So what are those high standards? Are those high standards blocking us from joining the law enforcement department? How actively are you recruiting us? And when I say us, I'm talking about Black and brown people. I don't think we can say now, you know, it should be acceptable that you have an all-white police force. No. You can't tell me nobody else applied that was qualified. And if not, then it is your responsibility to go out and find folks that can be a part of this police department. Because if you talk to a lot of young people, they all say, you know, I want to be a policeman, fireman. These are things that initially they're very much interested in doing. It's a good career. It's about protecting and serving your community. So go find some.
I feel like the phrase defund the police has been so scary to everybody.
Yeah.
I feel like people don't really understand what defunding the police means. When they say defund the police, they don't mean take all their money and take their cars and throw them in the garbage. Like, they don't mean that at all. I feel like they just mean take a little bit of that money and allocate it towards other things that are needed in the state. Like, I don't know, education. You know, I have
mental health.
I have teacher friends who are coming out of pocket for crayons in their classroom, and police officers are driving around in Teslas. So it's just kind of like
cars every 2 years.
Funding the police doesn't mean take all their money and leave them in, you know, it means just taking a little smidge of that money that they have to buy their Teslas and their brand new cars and jazz it up and just give some kids in the school some pencils and some paper, you know. Like, I wouldn't say I don't believe in defunding the police, and I won't say I do believe in defunding the police. I think people need to be clear about what it means when they say defund the police. You know, if you know.
I think it's different in different places too. Like, every city has a different situation. And smaller towns have a different situation. So I think there was an like overall national call for it, but that comes down to reviewing like each area's specific needs, like, is because some places might have a perfectly allocated like funding for all their different programs, but some cities, you can look at the budget and see there's no reason that the law enforcement has that much extra compared to so many, like that much surplus in comparison to other programs. So yeah, like Jayda said, it's not just like taking it back, it's kind of restoring balance to other programs that have been lacking.
Right.
Yeah. And also just I'm in the middle too, because I do believe they should move to the money to education and mental health. Because then right after our Trenton protests, the riots that happened afterwards, they brought out tanks. And I'm thinking, where are these tanks from Trenton? Like, where did they store these tanks? So, yeah, the militarized weapons, do you really need them? But then once you take that away, it's kind of like, I do agree, you need to change the mindsets, the people behind those weapons, because if they just have a baton and handcuffs, and they're still racist, they're going to find a way to hurt you regardless of what kind of weapon they have. So you can take the tanks, all of that, and leave them with nothing. And if they're racist and they have that type of mindset, they're going to try to hurt you regardless of what resources you have. At the same time, what happened at the White House, it's kind of like, maybe you do need those tanks. Those are when you've been bringing them out. They were literally, not the White House, but they were literally like storming the Capitol. And climbing the walls. It's like, Trenton, like, you had the tanks downtown, like, we're down at the Capitol. Why aren't you using, you know, why didn't you at least bring them out? At least it wasn't even to be found. So it's kind of like, there's a time and a place to use certain weapons. If they're storming the Capitol, okay, maybe you need to bring something out. But if it's just something small as a traffic stop or protesting, you don't need to bring out tanks. You really don't, and tear gas, you really don't. So it's prioritizing and knowing there's levels to everything. And right now they're putting everything on like it's like slanted, like storming the Capitol down here, but a protest in Trenton is like, so yeah.
Well, thank you for that. We're going to be closing. So I'm going to ask one final question just as a wrap up. And Assemblywoman Reynolds-Jackson kind of touched on it, but I just want to stress it and hear your perspective and what you think about or why you advocate for Black Lives Matter.
Well, Black Lives matters to me because it is definitely an effort to acknowledge and to accept us as human beings. And I think for us, and when we look at systemic racism, when we look at all of the things from education to jobs, to housing, to food insecurities, to health disparities, when you look at all of these things, we have been impacted and marginalized so much. And what we're saying is that we are human beings too, and we want to be represented in this country as an equal to everyone else. And so when you start to look at, and we've talked about it on this call, the police department, our government, our public servants, when we look at all of these boards and commissions, where are we? Where are we? And we're saying that we want to be a part of the decision making, and we want to be able to have some of the benefits and rewards that everybody else has been able to live by. And so we have to continue to remind and to talk and to advocate for ourselves, because this is our survival. If we don't, we will continue to be marginalized and diminished. And I think that's where we have found a voice, and this is where we're saying what we need and what we expect of America, of our country, that we have all worked so hard, our ancestors, and we wouldn't be here today if it weren't for them. And so somebody said it on the call earlier, we're having these conversations as the same as they had back in the 50s and 60s. And we are. And so this is why we're saying Black Lives Matter. This is our time to say the dream is not dead, it's still alive, and we're want to be at the table and treated as equals.
Well said.
I 100% agree with that. I feel like if you would have asked me this question before this past summer, I would have been like, yes, I love Black Lives Matter. I love the name. I love saying it. But honestly, and Kayla and Kyla, you guys can piggyback off of me, but I feel like this summer was such a, it was more like trendy when it came to Black Lives Matter.
Mhm.
I felt like people were using the term.
It became commercialized.
Yeah.
Commercialized.
That's the word that I was looking for. I feel like people are kind of just using it a little bit too freely for me. I felt like it was the bare minimum, like Black Lives Matter. I felt like that's very bare minimum to me. I feel like it needs to be something bigger now, because I feel like after this summer, a lot of people just thought that the Black Lives Matter movement started this past summer. The Black Lives Matter movement started when Trayvon Martin passed away, which was in 2012, 2011.
Right.
So I just feel like moving forward, I want something more than Black Lives Matter. But I definitely do. Obviously, I'm Black. My family's Black. I do believe our lives matter when it comes to the term in itself. When it comes to, the whole Black Lives Matter, with the look of Black Lives Matter, BLM itself, I feel like we need something more than that now.
Do you have an ideal to offer? Something you want to land?
I have
Not yet.
Not yet. I feel like after this summer, everybody's kind of just needs a refresher and step forward and come back harder and figure out what's next. But I think it needs to mean more when you say it, because a lot of people are saying it, but not really meaning it and not really understanding what it means to say it.
Exactly. For me, when I say it now, I'm referring to the movement. I'm referring for the calls against police brutality and the calls for justice. But the saying itself, that's obvious. Of course, our lives matter. All lives really do matter, but all lives aren't being harmed and killed and taken away from their families at the hands of law enforcement. So that's the purpose of it. But I also agree with what you said, Jayda, that I think we need something else. I think, especially after last summer, if anyone hears Black Lives Matter, if they're not listening or in tune to it now, then they're never going to be. So I think it does need to be something stronger, like another level of it.
Yeah, I think it's easy for companies to put it on a shirt and at the NBA games and put it on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram. It's easy to just put it out there and think that's all there is, just to say they're in solidarity. But I think it's deeper, like we've all said, it's way deeper than that. I think it's more than police brutality, it's mental health, it's education, and the medical field, healthcare. Yeah. So it's deeper than just police brutality. Like that's the first layer of what Black Lives Matter really means, to us at least. So like they said, it really has been commercialized, really fast. Over the summer, it was just, thing was just sped up really fast, and companies were trying to push out how they can staying in solidarity with us. And it just went out really, really fast, and now it died down. As we all know. We're not seeing it on TV as much, and we're not hearing it on the radio as much. So it was trendy for the time, but it is deeper than just the phrase.
Right.
So we have last 7 minutes, and I'd like to start with Kyla. Do you have any last words of wisdom to leave with us tonight on this subject?
Well, I want to say thank you to you guys for having me, because this is a really cool discussion. And my last words of wisdom are just practice activism in your community, but also personally find ways to just be better and to be a stronger ally to others. I do it, I have to work on it too. So it's just, practice your activism in ways that you can, listen and learn.
Wonderful, well said. Okay. Kayla.
Okay, I also want to say thank you guys for having me. This was a great conversation. The last thing I want to say is, when it comes to activism, I've always found it best to find something you're really good at when it comes to helping the community, and like stick to that and just excel in that. Because when it comes to activism, you can't do everything. You're going to stress yourself out trying to attend this and do that. But I feel like once you find your own lane and something you're really, really good at and you can really help the community with, stick to that. And then you can start expanding with that one lane that you're really good in.
Good. All right, Ms. Jayda.
I also want to say thank you guys so much. It's good to see some new faces and have this conversation with you guys. My few words of wisdom personally, just because this year has everything going on. If you do want to be active and do something for your community, find it truly in your heart. Like, don't do it just because you see everybody around you moving and you see everybody else doing. Do it because you genuinely want to, and like, I want you to feel it, because a lot of people are making protests and working in their community and then not really putting that true, genuine intent into it. So if you're going to do something, have genuine intent and have meaning and reason behind it. I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will help. Assemblywoman.
Well, you know what? I thank you also. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. Thank you to the young ladies on this call. You are all phenomenal, brave, and courageous. And, I can't say enough about you all, and just the way that you were so outspoken tonight. Continue that type of using your voice and just leading. You never know who's watching, and you're just such great leaders in our community. And I just wanted to leave you with one quote, and it's one of my favorites, and it's by Vera Myers, and she says, "Diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance." And I think that's what we're talking about here today when we talk about Black Lives Matter. We want to be inclusive in all aspects, and not just, value our input and value our insight, and we will be able to show you the leadership that we have in us to make everyone prosperous. So thank you to the League of Women Voters for this opportunity tonight. I really appreciate being here.
And we thank you. We thank you. Nicole, do you have any last closing comments? What happened to Nicole?
Yes, I will say a few things from my invisibility, which is that we so very much appreciate you being here, and we would like to stress to our members of the League of Women Voters that this is a all hands on deck effort, and that I love it when we're told, if you're going to do something, do it with conviction, do it with serious purpose, because as we have been told, our league has a pretty sad history back at the turn of the 20th century, when a lot of fights were going on and a lot of Black women were fighting on one hand and white women were fighting, and it was going to be a side-by-side fight, but then at the last minute, those nice white women got freaked out and they asked the Black women not to march, you know, in DC or on that particular day. So we do know that the League has a very checkered history, but we also know that for at least the last 10 years that I've been active in the League, equity, inclusion, and governmental transparency are what we fight for. So we're thrilled to have you here tonight, and we just want to encourage our League members in particular to always have that, you know, to always be looking for the equity angle in the fights that we pursue, whether it's at the ballot box or the community policing. So that's what's on my mind, and we really appreciate hearing from all of you.
Awesome.
Well said, well said. So we thank you for joining us tonight, and panelists, thank you again for all the wisdom.
You're welcome.
And
thank
we'll
you.
say good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brickers. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.